Good morning, everybody. Good morning. A very good morning and hope you are doing great today. Welcome to Sundays with HK. And today's topic or today's subject we are going to deal with is interviews, prominently job interviews, which is a concern for a lot of people. And as I've been saying about job interviews, it becomes a huge stress on people. Just the thought of getting into a job interview. First, getting a job interview is a challenge, and then after a lot of efforts, lots of hits and misses, you do end up getting a job interview. And then the challenge is the interview itself. You go into an interview with a certain mindset. During the interview, you are in a different state of mind. And once the interview is over, there is this perennial state of suspense. And we don't really have a culture of recruiters responding or informing you how you have done. There is no feedback generally. And most of the times they won't inform you if you did not make it. So you're like forever waiting. And then one day you decide to contact them and they tell you, oh, no, we have found someone and the position is no more open. And that's where the suspense ends. So it's a very stressful journey for everybody. And whoever is looking for a job actively would have multiple such interviews that they are vying for and they are making an attempt in, which means the number of stress zones only increases, and it's almost a continuous journey because one after the other it continues. And this has a very definite and a very negative impact on your own psyche as well as capability during the interview. It affects your interview directly. And I found this very interesting video which I saw a couple of days ago, and I would like to share that with you here. And just it's a 2-3 minute video. Observe what is happening in that video. It's a small experiment, and while you're watching it, imagine what is its relevance to the whole interview process and your state of mind during the interview process. So let me just kick off that video. Where is my YouTube window gone? Okay, there we go. Share screen with sound. Observe carefully.
Biggest adolescent is written all the way throughout this text. The biggest fear of an adolescent, Jesse,
Not fitting in.
is not acceptance. Now to understand how this
You guys can hear it, right? Just to make sure.
Yes.
Fantastic.
happens and how this looks and what this feels like, I'm going to have you do an activity. This is an on-your-own activity, and just this is not to tax you. These are easy things. This is just to kind of get you feeling what we're going to go over. So everybody, if you would, take out a short piece of paper. I'm going to pass out these papers, and just keep them face down. And if you would, no one write on these. Write on your own papers. Keep them face down. Yeah. Everybody have one? If you would, just do them one at a time, and I will tell you when to do them. Everybody turn it over. Just do your own work. And this isn't meant to be hard. These are anagrams. Just do the first one only. Go ahead and solve it. An anagram is rearrange the letters to form a word. Just one. Just rearrange those letters to form a word. When you're done, I need to see your hand raised. Okay, keep going. We'll wait. Keep your hands up, please. Just do number one. Don't go on. Don't go on. This isn't meant to be difficult. Okay, put your hands down. Let's just go to number two. Don't even worry about number one. Go to number two. Solve that one. Again, when you're done, I want to see your hands up. Everybody's hands down. We're going to go ahead and do number three. For number three, rearrange the letters, and as soon as you do, go ahead and put your hand up. Here's what you need to know. You were both given two different lists. This side of the room was given these three words. The left side of the room, here you go. They were given bat. What would the word be? The second one, they were given lemon. Brian, the word? Melon. They were easy. The trick here was both of you were given the third word, which was the same. The third word was Cinerama, which was American. Your first two words on this side of my classroom were not solvable. They were impossible tasks. I'm sorry. I know, but here's what we did this for. I was able to induce something called learned helplessness in the left side of the room very easily within about 5 minutes. I want you to think about what happened to you, this left side of the room, when you saw the right side of the room raising their hands because they already had the task done. What happened to you during that time?
Great. Appreciate if you all can come on video as well as audio also, because this is where we are going to have a chat. Interesting video, right? Ashish, Pratik,
Yes.
and Vinod. So,
Yes.
your first reactions about the video overall.
So my attention is actually going to the last part of the video where the left side of the audience must, like what the left side of the audience must be feeling, because the right side of the audience was able to kind of crack it within less than 5 minutes. So
Yes.
of course you start thinking about it. So that was my only observation at this point of time. That is what is going in my mind.
Right. Pratik, we don't see you yet. Are you there? Okay, while Pratik comes on, Vinod.
Yeah, I actually had heard this word learn helplessness, but I saw the demo today. Thank you for that.
Because I came across this video, I think in the last 1 month, and I found it very, very powerful. Because, and then that statement which was there, that I was able to induce this in just 5 minutes. The teacher said that. And I was thinking, like, when people go from one interview to another and face rejection, the amount of learned induced helplessness is huge. This was just a 5-minute small exercise, inconsequential. Like, if you were not able to solve those 3 questions, it's not a big deal. But when you go to an interview, and most often people are thinking like, oh, my life depends on this interview, on getting this job, and so on and so forth. Like that, there is such a strong association and a significance attached to that event. And when they fail at it, because that's the underlying thought process which goes on, which is not correct, but which is there. And one after the other, it happens until you get the job. But before that, so much of learned helplessness. Every interview they go to next, they're carrying this baggage with them of failures, right? And that mindset is there. So their preparation is with that mindset. And the interview itself is with that mindset. They are half expecting to fail now. And when you are half expecting to fail, would you be even giving your 100% to it? So it's like a fighting a losing battle. You know you're not going to win. So the effort you put in is that much like, okay, I'm anyway not going to win. So let's see. You go in with that rather than, oh, I'm going to crack it. And I've myself experienced it way back in time when I was doing my summers interviews. During the MBA course, we had this summers project we had to do. And it would be like a full recruitment process. We would be interviewed and so on and so forth. And I gave 3-4 interviews and I did not crack them. And it did affect me at that time. So I was just sitting in the auditorium waiting for the next interview call and literally thinking that probably by the end of the day, I'm not going to make it. And a friend comes and talks to me about what has happened and what next. And she was like, so what happened? And in those 5 minutes of conversation, she refers the effect of those 4 interviewer failures. The next interview I entered with, I'm going to crack this. I am going to get this one. And I did. Just the change of mindset is such a powerful thing that when you decide you're going to win, every faculty of your mind, body will come and play with it. And you are working with it. And that Shah Rukh Khan, and as Alchemist said it, when you want something with all your heart and mind and soul and passion, the new universe will conspire to get the things in order. So yes, a little bit of that also, but you need to take the first step. You will have to bring the heart, soul, passion, everything into it before the universe can contribute, right? So that mindset is extremely important, because the mindset is operational and is driving your preparation, and then it is driving the actual interview also. Okay, which is why I wanted to share that video, and a very powerful video explains also very beautifully on the effect the mindset has on your. Okay, part of the mindset is also preparing yourself. I mean, when I say preparing for yourself for the interview, you need to do your homework right. There are times when, out of desperation, like you have already failed at a couple of, you've not got the job at a couple of interviews, and people will start pretty much applying for jobs left, right, and center. Any job they see which has got a remote connection to something they have done in the past, they'll start applying. Right? In a bid that, okay, let me get to the interview and I'll somehow do something and get the job. At least I will try. You probably don't fit that job. You don't probably have a liking for that job, which means your preparation and your performance in the interview will also be driven by that underlying fact that you hold in your mind. So your fitment to the job is extremely important. And that brings us to the conversation about the core of what an interview is. An interview is not a selection or a rejection process. The interview is basically a conversation to find fitment between the person and a specific role, right? And that specific role exists in a specific organization, in a specific department, within a specific team. Whoever is recruiting you is not just looking at you as an individual who is, let's say, capable, or do you have the capability and capacity to do the job? That's not the only criteria. That's an entry criteria. You reach the interview stage only if they feel you are capable enough to do the job. And you probably have the capacity to do the job, which they will base on your academic scores. They will base it on your past experience, what kind of projects you have done, what kind of work you have done. Based on that, they are sizing you up, whether you will be able to do the job or not. The entire interview process is validating that, how capable and you are and what is your capacity. Then they are looking at your thinking process, the thought process. Is it that you know certain things and you will be able to do it, or you will be able to figure out new things? So they are looking at your thinking process, your learning abilities. Are you a quick learner, slow learner? So they are trying to assess all those things. And the third part of the assessment is whether you will fit into that specific team, into that specific department, in that specific company. And that is the majority of the interview. Barring the bottom of the pyramid jobs, there it is just hands and legs and mind applied to a certain skill to give an output. As soon as you start rising, as soon as you have got 2 years of experience, 3 years of experience, all the organization wants to assess you on is the second and the third part. Can you learn? Can you think? Can you solve problems? And will you fit in the team? So it's a fitment conversation which is happening. They are not accepting or rejecting you. They are just looking at the fitment. If you fit the requirement and the environment in which you are going to work, you get the job. If you don't fit you don't get the job. It is not an assessment of your capability, capacity. Am I not good enough? So having those thoughts like, am I not good enough? And so on is literally a waste of time, right? Doesn't work and doesn't help. And there's no logic behind it. It's just a self-deprecating situation which you are creating and blaming yourself, but it doesn't help. And the fact of the matter is, they were looking for a fitment, and you are trying to take it all upon yourself. You're trying to blame yourself for not getting the job. So a very extremely important thing to understand is what the interview is. They are trying to find a fitment. If they don't find a fitment, you don't get selected. And please thank God that you don't get selected. You're not getting selected. Because if you got selected by mistake into a job where you did not fit, you're not going to like that job. You will get a job. You'll get a salary month on month, and you will probably perform at an average level or maybe to the best of your abilities. But you will never be comfortable working in a place where you don't fit. And you are probably not going to fit in there for various reasons. Sometimes you may understand them. Sometimes you may not even understand them. Something about the fitment that was ignored and you were selected in a job where you did not fit. Either the working style of the team doesn't fit you, or the demands of the job. Some jobs are routine. You're pretty much doing the same thing week on week, month on month. If you are a person by personality who loves challenges, who loves new things, who wants to do new things, who wants to challenge his own thinking, you will get bored in that job. You won't like it after some time. The initial phase is always challenging. You're learning, you're understanding the organization. So it will go through. But within a few weeks and a few months, you will start falling into boredom. The moment you start getting bored, your performance is going to suffer. Very logical. And then you are not even meeting expectations, forget exceeding them. And the same is true for opposite. If the job requires you, and the job is very challenging, new projects, new problems to be solved, looking at whether it's like a sort of consulting team within an organization, they are the problem solvers. And you are the guy who wants stability. I know this, I'm going to do this, I'll get it done. And you are being thrown challenges every now and then. Every month, a new team to work with. You won't like it. You will get stressed out. Which is why that fitment is extremely important. Do you fit? Does your personality fit? And all this is being assessed during the interview process. And this is all subjective. It is very difficult to give you a nice, accurate score on how do you fit. So it is entirely, so this entire subjective evaluation is entirely dependent on the interviewer or interviewers if you have got multiple rounds of interviews. So more the number of interviewers, we assume that it is a better process because one or the other will catch the right attributes. But it also means that somebody who is less than capable of assessing it will probably reject you at some point. Some interviews are, some processes are like 4 people will interview and they will collectively decide whether to take a person or not. Sometimes it's an elimination process. Every interview, some people are getting eliminated from the race. And the next round of interview is lesser people getting interviewed. So depending on entirely on which process it is, you probably don't have any idea of what it is. The capacity and the capability of the people interviewing you, and what the job requirement in terms of culture and fitment is. None of this is known to you. And most of the times, if you are capable, these are the reasons you will not get selected. And imagine when you come to know that you haven't got the job, you are sitting there and blaming yourself and trying to find a fault with yourself as to why I did not get the job. A completely fruitless exercise. When it comes to job interviews, our dear friend Lord Krishna said, "Karm kiye ja, phal ki ichha mat kar." While very difficult to do because the fruit, the job is what you are aiming for and you can't really ignore that. From the process perspective, go for the interview, give it your best shot, be true to yourself and the requirement of the job and deliver. Beyond that, beyond the interview, you will have to let it go. Right? And that is a very unique mindset, if you say. right? Putting your whole and soul into something for a short time, delivering it, and then saying, okay, bye. If something comes out of it, great. Otherwise, I move on to the next interview. It is difficult, but that's the mindset we have to get into. Otherwise, the interview process will not only forever stress us out, but it will also give us the induced helplessness, which will impact our further future interviews. Right? Now, coming to the job itself. Again, I'm still talking about mindset. A lot of it is going to be mindset today. When you are applying for a job, one of the first things you need to do is understand the job you're applying for. Right? A lot of times people say that research the company. And yes, you need to do that. But even more important than knowing about that organization is to know about the job. Do you really understand the job? What it takes to do that job? What are the requirements of the job? What are the core technical skills that you need to know? If it's analytics, or if it's in finance, or in supply chain, or let's say in design, planning, buying, all different functions are there. And they have got their base knowledge. Do you have that base knowledge? Most of the times we are applying for jobs in the same area where we are experienced in, right? Sometimes we are venturing out and trying for jobs where we have no experience in. But we can't go into the interview without having any idea of what that job entails. So one is, what is the core functional day-to-day job that you will be doing? That's one part of it. What are the skills required for that? What is the knowledge required for that? Right? Attitude, of course, what is your thought process and thinking way? But knowledge and skills required for a particular job. You should have a very good idea of that. And that is where your first assessment comes in, whether you fit that job or not. Whether you are capable, which tells you whether your CV goes through or not. And even if the CV goes through, whether you should be going for the interview or not. Because if you don't have those skills and that knowledge, even if you got the job, you will fail. Right? So that's the first step. Second is, of course, what kind of responsibility does that role comes with? A team member, a manager, a senior manager, and even higher. Each level has got a very different responsibility. A team member's role is probably to get, right, to do the work. The manager's responsibility is to get the work done. The senior manager will be looking at multiple departments and ensuring that all the work which is getting done by the managers is in sync. And when you, as you go to the top management, their role is not about the work getting done or things like that. Their thinking process is about what work to do. So they are creating the direction for the organization. This is the direction we are going to do. These are the products or these are the services we are going to get into. Then some team is assigned, okay, you develop this service or product, and then that team is working on getting the things done. So you understand at different levels, the role is different, the thought process is different. The skills required from the responsibility perspective will be different. Going from hands and legs to head and then to the heart. From operational to managing to strategic level thinking. It's a very different way of thinking. Do you have it in you? Do you have any experience of doing that? Right? That becomes very, very important. So taking that even further, I've already talked about whether it's going to be a project environment where your work changes, or the kind of things you work on and the people you work with keeps changing every now and then. It could be as frequent as weeks and months, or it could be like this year you are doing this project, next year another project. Is that a kind of environment you want to get into, or a more routine environment where you're pretty much doing the same thing week on week, month on week, and only when you get promoted to a different level does your job change, or you actually move into a different role in a different organization or the same organization, your work will change. So do you want stability and routine, or do you want challenges, and so on and so forth, right? So this is what you will have to think about, understanding the job and the role so that you decide first whether you want that or not. Beyond the blindly applying for jobs, this is your first assessment. Even before the organization has begun to assess you, in terms of your CV and the interview, you have begun to assess the role and of course the organization also. Do you want to work in that organization? Right? Also, if you have a current job that you are getting out of, one of the key questions they will ask the interviewer and you need to be aware of is, why are you leaving? Why do you want to move out? That is, the clarity is important from two perspectives. One is you need to know what you're leaving and what you're leaving for. There might be some negatives or some undesirable things at your current workplace you are leaving. It could be a bad boss. It could be lack of growth. I could have spent 10 years in an organization. I feel that I've learned a lot. That organization is great. Bosses are great. People I work with is great. But last 2 years, I am stagnating. I've kind of reached beyond which point I cannot go up and I'm not learning anything new. And I am a person who needs to learn something new. So this is the reason I'm leaving, and that's the newness is what I'm looking at. Or I might be leaving a bad boss. In which case, it is very important for me to have a workplace where the boss is of a certain kind, supportive, etc. Someone who gives you freedom, probably, whatever you're looking for. This is very important because during the interview, that clarity will help you assess whether you want to get into this new job or not. I'm going to talk a lot about you accepting or rejecting the job rather than the interviewer and the organization accepting or rejecting you. Because that is one part which is often missed by a lot of job seekers. A lot of people, job seekers, are often looking at the acceptance and rejection from the organization point of view only and not their own. And I strongly recommend you do that. I have been in interviews where at some point I have told the interviewer, you know what, I don't think I really fit that job for this reason. And I told them that these are the reasons. I don't really think I would like to do that job, or I don't fit that job. If I have someone else in mind, I'll recommend that to them. That, you know, I have a friend, I have an ex-colleague who might be a better fit. You go talk to them. I'll connect you with them. There's no point in wasting my time as well as the interviewer's time if I know that I don't want that job. If I've not made up my mind, then I find I can just go on with the interview trying to crack it. Right? If I feel not very confident of telling them on their face that I don't want this job, the moment I realize that I don't want this job, I probably just let it go in terms of my performance in the interview. I don't perform at the level I would like to get the job. I just go slow a bit. No, there's no point in me trying to get that job I don't want and then say no to them. I'm wasting everybody's time. Right? All this talk about your mindset is to bring focus. Rather than applying for jobs left, right, and center, evaluate the jobs you are applying for and focus on the ones which you really want, which you would enjoy doing. In desperation, do not get into a job which you won't enjoy, because very soon you will get desperate there also. And this is irrespective of the fact whether you are holding a job currently or not. Sometimes we are so just frustrated with your current job that you want to get out. And you will take up anything which comes, even at the cost of trying to fit yourself forcefully into the job requirement during the interview, which often leads to you lying about either your capabilities and capacities or the attitude or your skills that you bring to it. You lie about it, assuming what the interview might want to hear as an answer. So you are constantly thinking about what will be the best answer that this person is expecting. A very wrong way to approach an interview. Yes, if you're desperate and you want a job at any cost and any job will do, go ahead and do that. But of course, once you get the job, you're not going to be happy in that job. But if you want to avoid that phase in life and you want to avoid getting into a job you don't want, be true to yourself and the job requirement. Don't get into a job which you're not going to enjoy and which does not fit you. Do that fitment analysis yourself. Don't just leave it to the interviewer. Okay. Now, salary is something which gets discussed at the last part of the interview. Like you have gone through several rounds, and probably the last conversation is the HR interview, as they call it, or the salary discussion. In between, questions will be asked, but yes, there's no discussion on it. They're just recording what is your expectation or things like that, right? Now, it's a very, very important thing to be left at the last. So my approach has always been, whenever I am approached for an interview or a job opportunity, that's one of the first questions I asked. What is the salary range they are offering? Because I have had experiences in the past where they declined to tell me about the salary range in the beginning. We went through multiple rounds of interviews. At the end, I cracked the interview. They make an offer which is 20%, 25% less than what I was getting at that point in time. So it doesn't make sense to take that job, right? And I tell them and say, oh, I asked this question right up front. Why didn't you tell me? Right? So I would strongly recommend that when you have a consultant approaching you or a job, at least try to find out what is their salary band, and are you comfortable applying for that job or getting that job. Forget applying. Will you be comfortable if you are offered that salary? If it is close to what you are expecting, then of course there is always some room for negotiation. You can always prove yourself and ask for your number, and they may be able to figure something out. They'll take some internal approvals or things like that. But if the difference is significant, if their band stops at a level which is much lower than your existing salary or what you are expecting, then it's going to be a futile exercise in giving the interview, probably cracking the interview, and then coming to a point where it's not going anywhere. You've wasted your time as well as their time. So don't do that. And from a salary perspective, it's not just one number that you have in mind. Over the years, in my conversations with so many different people that I've coached for job interviews, I think there are these 3-4 numbers that you should have in mind. Right? The first number is, what do you need? And the keyword is need. What is that basic, bare minimum salary that you need to survive? No luxuries, no movies on the weekends, not going out frequently. What is that bare minimum number that you need? If you're in a desperate condition, what is that bare minimum number that you will need to survive? Right? That's the starting point of your thinking. Anything below that is not going to work for you. Right? The next is, what do you want? That's like the opposite end of the spectrum. Right? You may be driving a Maruti 800 from the yesteryears and you may dream of a Ferrari. So what do you want? And this is two extremes. What do you need bare minimum to meet your expenses? Just live without really running out of balance at the end of the month and thinking, oh, I'm going negative balance now. I have to use my credit cards to just pay off my bills. That's what you need. What you want is the other end. And now we come in between. Based on the job, the role, the level at which the organization fits in, based on your experience that you have. You may have worked in an organization, irrespective of a salary, but you have acquired great skills. You need to find out, talking to your friends, talking to people in your network, what do you deserve? The salary you deserve is an extremely important point, because that is going to be something that you should aim for. Anywhere in between what you deserve and what you want. That what you want has got no limit. So people can go crazy in terms of what I want. A fresher may think, oh, I want 50 lakh salaries. But the average out there is 20, 25 lakhs in India. Right? So it has to be even logical and realistic. All these numbers have to be realistic. What you want can be unrealistic, of course. But what you need and what you deserve has to be and the deserve part is extremely important. I'll give you a case. One of the individuals I was coaching on their job interview, her current salary was, let's say, she was based in UAE, her salary was 5,000 dirhams. So in Indian terms, it would be 1 lakh rupees. 5,000 per month, which is a low salary here because you are hardly meeting your expenses, right? Your rent, if you have a school going kid, and your food expenses, 5,000 might not be enough to just meet these three. So it was probably lower than what she needed, right? Just that salary. And there was not much hope of getting a significant increment either. Her experience was very, very rich. Just by the stroke of luck and conditions at her workplace, a few people had left. She was given extra responsibilities. She was doing her job, her boss's job. So the learning curve was very steep and she had proved herself. So what she deserved was completely very, very different number and a very high number. When she was going for an interview, and it was an interview in another country. So one of the questions I asked her was, what are you going to ask for? And she said, see, I'm already getting 5,000. 20%, 30%. I said, no, you can't settle for 20%, 30%. She said, I will ask for 50% more. So I said, this conversation is not going anywhere. So I changed the conversation. I said, okay, what are you going to ask? What do you want? What do you deserve? And we started that conversation. And she told me about all this. Like, I'm doing my boss's job and my colleague has also left. So I'm literally doing 3 people's job and this and that. I said, so, okay, what should be your salary at this current organization? She said, forget 5,000. It should be 20,000. I said, then why are you asking for 7,500? That one question shifted her attitude towards herself and the job she was vying for completely. And I said, you deserve 20,000, right? I said, yes. Then why don't you ask for it? So nobody will give me. I said, what they will give is the next question we'll come to. But do you think you deserve 20,000? He said, yes. Then you should talk with the confidence of a person who is worth 20,000 dirhams. So in your role, in when the job you are applying for, if you think you deserve 40 lakhs, and it has to be a very realistic conversation you have with yourself. It should not be in the air. It should not be wishful thinking. It's that attitude which you carry, not arrogance. It's the attitude. It's the right mindset you carry that I deserve this salary because this is what I bring to the table. These are the skill set. This is the thought process. This is the strategic things which I bring to the table. These are the technical skills I bring to the table. I have achieved these things. I have achieved these numbers in the past. This is the value I can add to your organization, which could be in millions, which could be in lakhs, which could be in crores. And that's why I deserve this kind of a number. That should be the attitude. Right? Now, what you're trying to figure out with all this is, depending on what the organization band is, what you should be getting from that organization. Right? The organization and what you deserve and what the organization is to offer. All this thinking is required. What you need, what you want, and what you deserve. And the final thing will be, is what comes from a typical negotiation. Your walkaway price. It's that number below which you will not accept that job. So that's your compromise number. You deserve something, but keeping in mind the role, the organization, the brand of the organization, you're ready to work at a slightly less than number or a significantly less than number of what you deserve. And it could be anything. So for this lady, while she deserved 20, she was getting only 5. So realistically, in her mind, she said, probably my walkaway price will be 10. And she said, I will ask for 50. And she did that. The offer from the other side was actually only 7,500. She asked for 15. And she said, below 15, it's not going to work for me because that is what I deserve. And of course, I will have to relocate. My whole family will have to relocate. And she gave them all the reasons. Next day, they came back with saying, we'll give you 10. In her mind, 10 was the walkaway number. From 5, she was jumping to 10. And she said, Hemant, I got 10. She's excited. She was very happy. I said, but you deserve 20 and you were aiming for 15. 10 is, yes, your walk away, but that's your walk away price. You don't jump at the walk away price. That's like their last resort. So tell them nothing less than 15 is going to work, because you will relocate. Your husband will have to relocate with you. Husband has a job there, so there he will be without a job. Your mother will be there because your kids are there. So it's not easy. She gave them that feedback. 2 days later, she calls me and said, Hemant, I've got a counter offer. I said, what? I said, the counter offer is 10,000. I said, 10,000 was your earlier offer. What is the counter in that? They said they are giving a job to my husband also, and that will be at 5,000. So my total of 15,000 is achieved. Now, in the absence of that mindset coaching, which I did for her, she would have probably settled for 7.5. Right? She was not even thinking about what she wants, deserves, walkaway price. She wasn't thinking like that. And that is what is important for you to think and observe, like, about yourself. You need to have these numbers ready so that when a job opportunity comes by, you are evaluating the job opportunity, whether you really want to fight for it or not. Okay? They're still creating the right mindset to go for the job. Right? And the salary is an important factor for us. I mean, in fact, salary is the reason we are doing the job. I remember years ago when I went to my alma mater, NITI, where I did my MBA from, and I was addressing the students and I asked them a question that, why are you doing MBA? I got beautiful answers, like make a difference, job satisfaction, this, that, corporate, this. Nobody said money. And like, I waited for 5 minutes and I said, nobody wants to work for money. Don't bullshit me. Everybody is working for money. So the salary is an important part of it, and you really need to think about it. Right? You need to know what the market trends are, what a similar role in different organizations is getting paid for. If you have friends and colleagues who are working in similar roles, similar levels, similar organizations, try to find from them. That knowledge is important because you are trying to form your own benchmark. What you need, what you want, what you deserve, and what is going to be your walkaway price. And this walkaway price is going to be different for every organization, because the amount of compromise you will do on the salary will depend on the organization also. Right? Back in my past, 2009, I got a job offer from IBM. I had clearly told them, I was in Satyam, IBM interview I was giving, and I was told, I had clearly communicated that my expectation would be a 20% salary hike. And I've got a 2 months notice period. I'm on a client facing interview. I'm on a client facing project role right now. So I won't be able to join you quickly or shorten my notice period. I will have to fulfill my notice period because somebody else will have to replace me in the project. So first they need to find somebody, then the visa process, then the person joins, I hand over at the client side. In front of the client, we both are there for some time and then I leave. So 2 months is going to be there. The day Kasab attacked in Mumbai, that's the day when I received the job, the offer letter from IBM. My joining date was within 15 days and the salary hike was 7%. And I actually got back to the HR saying, doesn't work on both counts. One, does not meet my expectations in terms of my salary. Second, I just cannot get out of this organization because I'm on a client facing role, and not because they will not leave me. It's just because it's my personal integrity and commitment that I just can't leave a project like that. I was very firm. I did not take up that job. I got multiple follow-up calls, but I was very clear that there are certain things which I don't go against, and I'm not doing it even for IBM. For a brand like IBM, there will be people who will be like, oh, I am getting a chance to work in a brand like IBM, like a TCS or a Wipro, right? Big names, Infosys. For working in that and getting that brand name on their CV, they are ready to compromise on the salary. If it's a pretty not so well-known company, people will be able to think of that as a smaller compromise. That, okay, I'm not going to compromise too much. I want this number. Otherwise, I'll wait for another company. This company is not really going to add too much value to my CV, probably. by its own name. So let me compromise. So let me not compromise on number. So the number that you arrive at, your walkaway number, is going to be different for every job interview that you are going for. Okay. But this is a homework that you will need to do before you even go for the interview. Okay. Now, coming to the interview itself. And before we go there, any questions you guys have? Ashish, Rashmi, and even Vinod, if you have any question. Guys, you're there? I'm still connected.
Good morning, Hemanji.
Good
And
morning.
good morning, everyone. For the time being, it was very clear. And for me, no question. Maybe if further, I will ask you.
Sure,
Thank
sure.
you.
Perfect. Ashish? Ashish seems frozen. Okay. Maybe he'll reconnect or fine. We'll take the thing further. And now we come to the interview itself. Okay, Ashish, I see you moving. Any questions before we move forward? Yes, seems like some connectivity issue.
No questions.
Okay, great. So now we come to the interview.
Questions.
People go into an interview and they think they are at the mercy of the interviewer. The interviewer will ask questions and they will respond to the best of their abilities. So in their mind, the interview is being driven by the interviewer. And I would like to break that myth. There are very few or very rare interviews that are driven by the interviewer. Most interviews, you are driving. How's that? Very simple. Most interviews begin with the question, tell me about yourself, or tell us about your career to begin with. Partly it is because most interviewers haven't had time to look through your CV. So only when the interview begins, they are actually looking at your CV. And rather than read every word very carefully, they are asking you the question to take a shortcut. And they are also having the CV probably in front of them to have a look at it while you speak. So they have got half your attention, or probably 75% attention to you and 25% on the CV. The other is, it's an easy opening. If the interviewer is considerate, he is just trying to put you at ease, and nothing better than that question that talk about yourself. You're best at talking about yourself. So that's a safe question to begin with, and a most common interview first question in any interview. And that is where you take charge. Because every question the interviewer is going to ask after this question is going to be based on what you say during the answer to that question. So whatever you say as a response to talk about yourself is going to be the material from which they will pick up cues and ask you questions. Once you understand this and work on that, you are now in charge of the interview, because you are going to feed content to your interviewer and they are going to ask you questions from that. So you are basically going to seed all your future questions in that response. Make sense? Hopefully it does. Nobody's responding. I just see everybody on mute. A very, very important, yes, a thumbs up from Vinod. A very, very important aspect of this interview process is the answer to the question, tell me something about yourself, or tell us about your career. They'll give you up to almost 5 minutes, because you're trying to run down through your entire career through that, as whatever, be it short of 2-3 years or be it long 10-15 years. It is now your job to prepare for this question, to prepare an answer to this question, which is going to seed the things which you want. If you want mangoes, no point in seeding bananas or even bamboo. You will have to throw the seeds or plant the seeds of mangoes in there. So look at your entire career span of all the projects that you have done, of all the work that you have done. Identify all those things that you can talk passionately about. Those are the things which appear in your tell me about yourself speech. Consider it as a 5-minute speech introducing yourself. It should talk only about those things that you are very, very passionate about. If you were asked about any of those things that you mentioned during that 5-minute duration, you should be able to tell plenty of stories. You should be able to like go on forever if you wanted to, because those things are close to your heart. It could be a big achievement during your work life. It could be a big project that you have worked on. It could be a great big responsibility, an opportunity to work with the CXO and a difference you made to the work of the CXO. Any of those things, whatever you want to highlight, whatever you want to be questioned on, should appear in that 5-minute story. And that's the first thing you work on. Your CV may be 2 pages long or 10 pages long. I've seen both. I myself had a CV which was 7 pages long at one point in time. And I realized that I will never read a CV which is 7 pages long. So I tried to reduce it. Came down to 3 pages, and I'm still looking at it and wondering, am I going to read 3 pages? Can I reduce it even further? And then I'm like fighting with myself. Okay, what do I reduce? It's not easy because you feel everything that you've done is important and you need to tell every bit of the work you have done. Right? In the CV, you will have to balance it out. And similarly, in your interview, you will have to balance out of what you want to talk about. If there is a particular job which you did for a year, 6 months, or maybe a year, 2 years also, and there's not much meat in it. It was one of those compromise jobs which you have done in the past. You took it up because you had no other idea or you was just desperate to get anything. And there's not much achievement in there, right? You should find something, but if you can't, that's a job you don't really want to talk about. In that 5-minute speech you are going to give, that job should be just one sentence and move over to the next one, right? During my MBA, me along with a friend of mine, we started an online event. It was India's first online business simulation games event. There was nothing like that before. It had been attempted and it had failed. We were attempting it once again, and we were successful at that. And I also created the world's first MBA comic character as part of that event. Now, these are 2 things from my MBA days I always talk about in an interview. I don't talk about any other thing. None of the courses I did, none of the education part of it. This was practical learning. We managed a team of 30 people, which had senior members, junior members. Senior members were in charge of the strategic thinking design of the program or the design of the game. The junior members were tasked with coding the game. You had MBAs coding, and their learning was great. Both these levels were enjoying what they were doing. We were doing sleepless nights. We were having 3 a.m. brainstorming sessions. I could talk of this one project since I was very passionate about it. For 6 months, I was sleeping like 2-3 hours a day. I'm deeply passionate about it. This happened 2004 and 2005, like 18 years ago, and I'm still very passionate about it. If I were given a chance, I could give a 1-hour talk on this or even 2-hour talk on this in NITI to the students where I did that or anywhere else. I'm that passionate about it. I always mention this part of my 2-year journey. Before that, I had worked 1.5 years at Patni Computers as a software engineer and 1.5 years trying to do my own business, own training business. I had done Vedic Maths coaching. I had done GDPI, like group discussion and personal interview coaching. Right? I even coached people for their entrance exams. All that I had done. I was trying to run a business as a single person. So I was playing all the roles from chairman to chaprasi. I made sure to write the word chairman to C, chairman to chaprasi in the CV. Because that was bound to pique the interest of the interviewer and he would ask me question. And even when I was talking about, tell me about yourself, my Patni experience of software programming, where I just did that, software programming, I would say one line about it. But imagine what I said about my experience at training. I almost spoke for half a minute. That's what I would do. During my MBA, that event that I did, that I would talk about. Similarly, during my all subsequent jobs, my Satyam job, KPMG, Fujitsu, I would pick that one project which I am very, very passionate about. And that's what I will feed them more content on. Other things I'll just mention and skip over. They will probably not even remember those names or those things which I've mentioned in one sentence by the end of my 5 minutes. But they're going to remember what I talked passionately about, and they will be making their own notes, keywords to ask me questions about. And the rest of the interview will be based on only those stories. Unless, of course, you have an interviewer who has come in with the agenda and saying, I am going to ask these 5 questions. Whatever the person says, I am going to ask this question and I am going to use this approach to interview taking. And we'll come to the types of interviews also. But most of the interviews go with the flow. Most of the interviewers go with the flow. And you can define the flow. You can put in all the seeds in place so that the interview goes in the direction you want. Right? Any questions about this part? Because this is one of the most crucial parts of the actual interview and how you define the flow of the interview. Any questions about the interview itself? Rashmi, Simon, Prateek, Ashish, and Vinod.
No, I think this is very insightful. I never thought about it in this way, that the interviewee is going to drive the interview or define the course of the interview. So what you are passionate about needs to come out clearly in the very first question. So it's something that I used to follow a different structure, but I'll think about it and I'll have to work on it, I guess.
Yes, yes.
But no questions from my end.
Okay. Prateek, Rashmi, Simon, Vinod. Okay, nobody unmuting, so no questions about that. Now, so this is one area you need to prepare this 5-minute speech. Remember, you're going to talk about things that you're passionate about. And things you are passionate about, you can go on and on. If nobody stops you, you won't even stop, which is the pitfall you need to avoid. You can't go on and on in response to tell me about yourself or tell me about your career. It has to start, it has to go at a certain pace, and it has to end, which means you need to literally write down what you are going to talk about. You need to script it out, and you need to ensure that you are closing that in about 5 minutes. If you have a very interesting story to tell, the interviewer might allow you to go beyond that 5, 6, 7 minutes. Otherwise, they will get bored and stop you midway, which means there was probably another very interesting project coming towards the end, which you did not get a chance to speak. So you have to keep the whole thing very interesting. Give them enough information to sound very, like I always tell people that during my job at Landmark here in UAE during 2016 to 2020, I was working on a billion dirham plus project. It was a billion dirham project, almost $400 million project. This was an amazing project, which was one of its kind in the world, first of its kind in the Gulf. And I was working on the change management piece where I was working with 10 different businesses, 10 different brands, and getting them ready for that project, getting them ready for go live. And I had to go and interact with suppliers in China, and we met 2,500 suppliers. I've thrown in some big numbers and the uniqueness of the project and my role in it, all wrapped in under 30 seconds, 40 seconds kind of, or less than 1 minute. Right? If that person is making notes, he will be sure to ask me about this huge, big project I was part of. If that person is looking for somebody who is for a role which is going to be connected to automation or supply chain or projects, he'll make sure to ask me about this. So I have to create interest enough during that. So I can't go into too much details, but I have to add those things in, which is why it is also important to bring it under 5 minutes. Now, the rest of the interview. You have fed all the material, you have put down all the seeds, and some of those seeds will grow. And now you need to have a 2 to 5 minute content or speech ready for each of those seeds. Each of those projects or things that you have mentioned, you need to have some stories. Stories which project your contribution to those projects or to those things. What have you achieved? What have you made happen? What was your role in it? Were there any big problems that you solved? Were there any big challenges that you faced and you overcame? All this has to be ready. And now I bring in the job you are interviewing for. All the story writing that we have done, talking about yourself, always has to tell the interviewer that you are a good fit for the job you are interviewing for. Remember, we talked about knowing the job before you go for the interview, before you decide whether you fit for the job or not. Because now that you have understood the job and its requirements, you know what are the skills, what are the managerial skills, technical skills, people management skills, strategic skills that you need for that role. Handling people, handling challenges, handling conflicts. If you know all those requirements, the stories that you present in the interview should be kind of fulfilling all those requirements of the job. Your stories are not random. The stories are not what you love to talk about. The stories should be real, of course, that goes without saying. Never fib a story, because you will not be very genuine while talking about them, and your passion will take a dip when you're telling a story you don't believe in. So always try to stick to the facts, the reality, and present your best and the true best. So all your stories should be aimed at projecting some of the capabilities, the qualities and parameters which are required for the role you're looking for. If it requires talking about, if the job role requires managing people, what aspect of managing people that you have done in those stories? Like, for example, I'd love to talk about that MBA event that I was me along with a friend of mine. We were managing a 30-member team, right? So that talks about managing teams. We had conflicts coming up during the span of the event because we were working on it for almost 2 months till the event happened. In that, people fight, people have conflicts, they would have conflicts with us, we would have demand for something they wouldn't be able to meet. Some people would leave the team. We had like issues with retention, we had attrition, so we had to replace. These are all challenges related to people. Thinking strategically, we were constantly thinking on how do we make this event something which nobody has seen before. How do we bring in elements? If I had to talk about marketing, we created something as part of the event which was purely marketing based, which was fun stuff. We created the world's first MBA comic character as a marketing device, which was a great hit. So I can talk about marketing. See, remember, I'm still talking about that event, but I've talked about team management. I've talked about strategic thinking, why we did that, what we were trying to achieve. We were talking about marketing. I can even talk about design thinking. That when we were designing the whole thing, we had laid down certain design principles. This was way back in 2004. Broadband was not very common. We were creating an online event. We wanted it to look great. We already had Flash and absolutely jazzy interfaces being built. But all those interfaces came with its own weight. Using imagery and graphics was very heavy, which meant somebody on 256 kbps will not be able to see it, or will probably have to wait for 2 minutes for the page to load. Which meant we created a simple rule. None of the pages have to be more than 100 KB. The page has to load within 2-3 seconds. That kind of stringent design thinking. What will attract people? What will not attract people? What is the audience? If I'm thinking of marketing, I'm also thinking about my target audience. Our target audience was all MBA students across the country, not just top B schools, any B school, which were on broadband of 2 Mbps for the entire campus, as well as telephone lines being used. Like when we joined our MBA institute, we were on 256. No, not, yeah, 256 kbps for 6 months, after which the 2 Mbps line came for the entire campus. Today, we have got 200 Mbps for our homes, right? So our design, whichever angle I want to project in the interview, I can bring from that story. So each one of those seeds that you planted will have its branches, right? The whole trunk is there, and now you have all these branches that you can talk about. And you will have to pick the right branch to take forward in the interview, depending on what the interviewer is looking for or what the job fitment is. Or you could put forward 2-3 branches and you will have to connect them seamlessly. So this is what we were doing and we faced these challenges and we met these challenges and I did this to meet the challenges. So it has talked about people management. It has talked about your skills at people management and how you strategically thought about it and how you marketed it, how you managed people, processes, technology, senior management, stakeholders. You could bring in all those stories, right? And that can only come in if you have understood the job requirements. All your stories have to fit one or the job requirement. Think of it like this. If the interview is sitting there with a checklist of qualities and job requirements, he should be able to keep ticking one by one all these qualities that are required in a candidate. The more the number of quick ticks, the higher is the chance of your getting selected. So your entire storytelling is not random at all. It is very specific, very pinpointed to the job requirements. In your mind, you are shuffling through your different stories for a particular job and ready for it for a particular. So you may use different stories about the same project or the same event for different interviews depending on the requirement. But all this homework needs to be done in advance. And you need to have your stories very clear. Each of these mini stories should fit in a minute or two. That's the patience level I expect from an interviewer. He's not going to give you again 5 minutes to tell your story. No. The first question was your life story, your entire career. So they'll give you 5 minutes and they'll be patient because they are collecting information from it. Now they are asking you pinpointed questions. They want very clear, concise answers, and that's what you should feed them. So the preparation for you is to create those stories and very concise stories which fit into 1 minute, 2 minutes maximum if you're trying to bring in multiple aspects of the story. If you can keep the listener, the interviewer engaged in the story, then you could probably go to 2 minutes. Otherwise, 1 minute should be good enough. Okay. So you've married your stories with the job requirements. And during the interview, you are in the right state of mind to get the job you want. You are evaluating the job as well as you are being evaluated for the job and the fitment. You will obviously have certain questions about the job. And there are two ways of dealing with it. One is you ask the questions at some point in time during the interview. Generally, it will be at the end. Now, these are questions which are very important for you to decide whether you want to take the job or not. Or keep one question ready to ask, which could be about the organization, which could be about the department, the role, and what's the future is looking for. Like if it's a department, what kind of projects are you planning in future? I've got these experience, so I just want to know if it will be useful. Where's the organization heading? Is it looking for new markets? You could ask those questions, which are like on standby. Like if they are giving you an opportunity to ask a question, why not ask? Or if you don't really think that you don't have an intelligent question to ask, don't ask. Don't ask a rubbish question. But that's a but you should have some questions which are for you to decide whether I'll join a company or not. For example, again, I'll take my example. In the past 2-3 years, I have made my mind that I would ideally like to work as a change manager. That's my profession. In a place where I have a team to work with. So I've got at least 1, 2, or 3 people I'm working with, and I am the change manager, and I'm directing them, and they are learning change management under me. I work with this organization for a period of time, and I exit, and they continue with the organization as part of the organization, doing change management for future projects. That's the model I want to work with. I can independently work as an independent change manager without a team, but this is where I would want to go to. So I've got 2 ways of doing it. One, at the end of the interview, if it is not already clarified, I will ask that am I going to have a team or am I going to be the only change manager of your organization for the project or for any other project. The other thing is I slide it in my stories. I will make sure that I mention that I worked with a team and this is the way it works best. If you have a team, they can work like this and they can coordinate with all departments. They already have the knowledge about the organization. I am new to the organization and so on. I weave that requirement of mine in the stories I tell to tell them that I work like this. If that organization cannot provide me that kind of environment, they know that they don't have to select me. And I'm happy with that because I don't want to be in that job. If I'm okay with that, then during what I'm saying, I will talk about both. That I worked in these kind of projects where I had a team. I worked in projects where I did not have a team, but I worked with departments taking their help as and when needed. So I worked with communications department, training department, and even HR asking for 10% of their time to help the project. Or times when I had 3 people working almost full time with me on the project. I would put forth both if I'm okay with both. If I wanted to go in a certain direction, I will. So this is like a subtle way of telling them what I want. If that has not happened, if you're not comfortable doing in the subtle way, be not so subtle and directly ask the question at the end. But these are important things. This is just one example I gave. It could be any other thing. You could directly ask, who am I reporting to? What is the designation of that person? What is your career plan? In how many years are you typically having people move from one level to another? Is there a fast track? If you are sure that you are a super performer and you are a fast track performer and you would want to go at a faster pace in the organization than the rest of the organization should at least have a fast track program. They normally might be promoting people every 2 years if the person is capable, but you are somebody who wants to jump every year and you will prove yourself, you will deliver and ask for that promotion and demand that promotion, and the organization should be able to give it to you only if they have a fast track program. These are good questions to ask, provided those are important for you. So you need to figure out those questions that you would like to ask. Right? Talking about the job requirement and what your stories are, it's also important that while thinking about the job, you also create your own skill matrix. What are the skills you have? What are the capabilities you have? And how much of it is required for the job? Is there anything that you don't meet? And how are you going to deal with that? For example, as a change manager, I've got 17 years of experience of doing change management. Great experience. I can handle any interview. But there are certain organizations in their job description or in their requirements, they will have all those things like reputed institute, MBA, so many years of experience in this industry, experience in this, that, and then they will say change management certification. Sometimes they will also name a particular certification. Now, I don't have that. I don't have any certification. Now, how do I deal with that question of not having certification? I should be ready with the answer. Right? I've got 17 years of experience. So you take a call whether you want somebody with 17 years of change management, live experience of doing change management projects, or you want somebody who's got a certificate from a 3-day or a 5-day program and is now trying for a change management job. I'll leave that to you. I could answer. That's one way of answering. That's not the best answer, but that's one way of answering. Any gap you have between the requirements and what you have to offer, you need to have a response to that. It could be anything. Right? It could be a critical skill that is required for the job, a particular technical skill without which you cannot operate. Do you have an answer to that? Because if you don't have an answer to that, you probably don't fit that job anyway. Right? Now, this of course arises if your CV goes through. If the recruiting team feels that they have put down 6 requirements or 10 requirements, sometimes it's even a longer list. I have seen recently, I saw a JD which almost ran into like 3 pages probably. And I was like, my God, the requirements are way too many. If they have got these 10 requirements and you fit 6 or more, they will call you for an interview. So you may not be meeting 2, 3, or 4, but you need to still have a response to why you don't. What are you going to do about it? Whether it is important or not. How do you overcome it? How are you better than the one who meets that requirement? And so on and so forth. Those gaps have to be identified in skills and the requirements also. Okay, that's a very important thing. Great. Time for me to ask again if you have any questions till now of what I've spoken in the last 15-20 minutes.
No questions from my side. Uh,
Okay.
I think the earlier session where we spoke about being passionate about what are you passionate about, kind of working on that, and then the last session about marrying the passions or the stories or those small stories with the requirements of the company or the interviewer, where he can just tick mark against the checklist that possibly he has. I think that is important. So that is my key takeaway from this session, but no questions.
Perfect. Prateek, Rashmi, Simon, any questions?
Yeah, yes, if like we are applying for a job and we saw that whatever content they required, we have all these things.
Yes.
Even though they're asking for experience of 2 years, like I've been working in India, so I have experience of 2 years. But here, all the skills I have, except they are asking for the language French as well. So should we eligible to like apply this job or should take try or not?
So when it comes to language requirement, like in Middle East, often jobs come with an Arabic requirement. Similarly, if
Yes.
there are jobs which work closely with a certain geography or people from a certain country, they will have these specific language requirements. Now, that's a very difficult thing to overcome in your job because that's a basic communication thing, right? So I won't stop you from applying for it, but be
Yes.
ready to not be considered for that. Like if they don't connect with you, if they don't accept your CV even for interview stage, don't take it to your heart, right? There's no stopping you from applying for jobs, but don't do it with the hope of, oh, I'll get this interview call definitely because I match all the criteria. Language per se is a very strong criteria in certain roles, right? Otherwise, they won't even put it there. Most jobs don't come with a language criteria because English becomes the common de facto. Some will come because the people you interact with as part of the role, they belong to a certain, let's say, language community, and there's no overcoming that. You can't circumvent that. Okay. French,
Yes.
Arabic, Chinese, very difficult to overcome those language requirements. You can't learn very quickly also, unless you can.
No, it take time. Maybe 2 to 3 years it will take time. Even though I tried, but the accent, the way they speak, I couldn't do it. So
Yeah, yeah,
pronunciation is very important to speak French. So that's why I
absolutely.
thought it's not my cup of tea. So leave it. And now I want to start my career, but the things sometimes they ask experience. And if I don't have experience, they ask for 1 year and 2 year experience. Even though, what would you suggest? Should we apply for it or not?
See, as I said, there's no harm in applying, but you
Yes.
should be ready with your stories. See, between applying and getting to the interview is something which is not in your hands,
Yes.
right? You all they have is your CV, and CV
True.
offers you very limited space to project your personality. You can only put down your facts. You can't show your attitude. You can't show that you're a quick learner. Mentioning quick learner in the CV is like pretty meaningless when I look at it. It's like, what does it even mean? What do you mean by learning quickly? Right? Unless you
Yes.
can explain by a story, it doesn't mean anything, which can happen only in an interview. So with your CV, project the things that you want to talk about or project the things which are important for the job and the role and leave it at that. If you get the interview call, then you start preparing for the different aspects of the job requirement. See, getting into a job which has certain requirements, let's say the language requirement, even if you got the job, you will be miserable in that job because you're not able to do basic things because of language. Sometimes organizations are looking for a certain years of experience, but they are flexible about it. They will obviously not go for a complete fresher because then the organization will need to train that person from scratch, right? Most of the times asking for a certain level of experience, if it is just 2 years, 3 years, comes from the fact that they don't have the capacity to train you for the job. They can't afford to have a person come in completely blank and they invest in that person to teach him or her the job. and the person can start doing the job. They just don't have it in them. Their team size is very small and they just have 2-3 people in a team. So if a new person is joined in, the other 2 people will be burdened for training this person. They don't have it in them. That is why they want people with experience only. At the senior levels, they want that experience because along with that experience comes certain skills and learnings which can't be replaced.
Yes,
Right?
it add to their company benefits side.
Absolutely, absolutely. You need to have a strategic mindset, which probably comes
Yes.
after playing certain roles across levels. And that comes with years of experience. And they are looking for that. Right? So those things are in place. That filtering gets done at the interview level, and there is very little to do, little you can do to influence it while being just at the CV stage.
Okay. So means we should ready to accept, but we should try also. If we go
Yeah,
for interview, we can express ourselves that the content we know, only the problem is the language.
absolutely. See, language, again, if you can overcome, you will have to find a way of overcoming it. Don't try to get into a job which you will not be able to do. And language is a big barrier. So no point in fighting that barrier, because you will not be very comfortable doing that and it will become a daily challenge. And you don't want to be in a job where you are like every morning you get up like, oh my God, I still have to go and I have to go to this job and it's not going to be a happy day. And you don't want to wake up like that every day. So don't aim for that job. I mean, my advice would be don't aim for a job where you're not going to be happy.
Yeah, we cannot be progress. This type of environment, we won't be get progress, and health wise also not good.
Yeah, in 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, again, you will be looking for a job.
It happens. And second
No
thing,
point.
as you said, that sometimes we send our CV to the companies. They don't overlook. And when you sit in front of that, then they focus 50% on your CV and 50% on your talk. So it happened with me a few years before I applied for a job, administrative assistant, and it was very good company. And I sent my CV 3 months before. After 3 months, they called me and the manager called her, like the assistant, to bring my CV. And that time only he was reading my CV and he was asking the questions. But the way you said that sometimes you have to plant the seed so that can grow. So
Yes.
I started, like I have done my MBA in hospital management and HR specializations. So whatever I know best, I started talk about it. And I didn't expect that because they mentioned they need 3-year experience. I was not experienced at all because my experience was in interior design and decoration. But as like I just tried. So before reaching home, I just got the job and good salary. I didn't ask about salary. I like got a good salary as well. I did job. So sometimes it happened. We should try as a luck also.
Absolutely. See, as I said, they will list down a lot of these requirements and internally they know which are the requirements they can compromise on. Years of experience can be one. Certifications can be one. Relevant experience also can be one. I have applied to jobs which wanted 10 years of change management experience with 6 years in oil and gas industry. I had 9 years in change management experience and 0 in oil and gas. I applied for the role. I got through. Right?
Okay.
Because
sir,
I had got
what is the
other
change
things to
management?
prove myself and they were like, let's try this person. See, the HR or the recruitment team have a really tough and difficult job. We can blame them, we can curse them, whatever we want that they're doing. HR is always at the butt of all jokes. But they have a very difficult job. When it comes to recruitment, they are trying to find the right person for the role, the person with the right skill set, the right attitude, and somebody who will contribute to the organization. A wrong hire can cost a company millions because you have recruited that person, right? So you have stopped the process for looking another person. That person joins after a month or 2 months. And then you have to give the person time to get into the role, learn about the organization, start doing things and perform. And that can take anywhere between 3 to 6 months. Realizing after that period that this person doesn't fit, you've lost 8 months. And now you need to restart the journey of finding another person. You have paid this person a salary and you have lost 8 months of time, which is a very long time. right? And you need to restart the process. It will take another 4 months to get another person. You've lost a year. It's a huge task for them. So they are trying to find the best one. So they know what are the skill sets they need, which are the areas they can compromise on, which are absolutely non-compromisable areas, and so on and so forth. So they are trying to do their best job, which is why I say, when you don't get a job, it is not your fault. That's the first conversation we had when we started it. The mindset of interviews. Interviews are not a rejection process. They are not even a selection process. They are a fitment process. They are trying to see a fitment. If you don't fit, not your fault, not their fault. This match was not made to happen. It's like marriage, matchmaking, right? It just did not happen. You have to just look for another match. So there's no feeling bad about not getting a job. It was a learning experience. You got an experience of doing an interview. Go on to the next one, right? Okay. So we have covered pretty much most of the topics that I wanted to talk about. It was about the mindset, about the preparation, about the storytelling that you need to do, about the stories that you keep ready, right? All the different stories that are trying to fit the requirement so that the person, see, these are again, once again, not false stories. They're all true stories that you're telling them. All you're doing by following this kind of a process is presenting your best self to them, giving them the right information so that they can create a proper fitment chart. They can tick all the boxes of the requirements to know that, oh, this person fits well. Right? Simon, you have raised your hand. You have a question. You can unmute, come on video and seriously ask the question.
All right. Thank you very much, Festy, for this amazing session. Basically, I just have 2 questions I would like to ask.
Sure.
The first question is can you assist to elaborate on how, as a, let's say, somebody who is going to be interviewed for the managerial position, how do you handle conflict within the team, especially when you're having the team, let's say, especially when you're a project manager and you're dealing with people with different characters, different background. Conflict within the team is something that might come at any time. So how do you handle the conflict within the team to ensure that the projects are delivered within the time? That's my first question. And the second one is it right to ask the interviewers how, based on my skills, how are they going to use me in order to suit or to fit with their future plan?
Absolutely. So second question is a direct yes, right? Where do they see your fitment into the current phase of the organization as well as future? Where do they plan to utilize your skill set, your experience in the growth of their organization? Is a great question to ask, because it also tells them that you are concerned about your career as well as how you will contribute to the organization. At the same time, if they are able to answer that question, you come to know that you will be valued at this organization. You are not just going to be another pair of hands and legs and head who are working in a place justifying a particular role and requirement. You have got a larger role to play, a contribution to make to the organization and the future of the organization. So that's a great question to ask. Now coming back to your first question about a managerial role, about conflict management, right? Somewhere initially I talked about that in the organization, as you rise higher, right? At the bottom, people do stuff. In the middle, people get stuff done. People get work done. And at the top, people are deciding what work is to be done. What is the strategic direction of the organization? What are the things we should be doing? What services, products, and so on and so forth, right? So they are deciding the direction of the organization and what needs to be done. The middle layer is who is getting the work done. The managerial skills are very different from the skills required at the bottom. and the skills required at the top, strategic direction and managing different departments and internal, external markets and everything is completely different. When you are applying for a job, you should, that's what we talked about earlier also, that you should be assessing how well you fit into those roles. What are the requirements of the job? As a manager, you will need to have team management. You will also need to have conflict management. You will need to have stakeholder management, because these are the things you are doing day in, day out. Conflict management. Do you have any experience of managing conflicts? If yes, those stories will help in establishing that. While you are answering the questions or talking about certain situations and times in your career, you should put forth, oh, there was this conflict between these stakeholders and how I managed it. And you bring that story out so that those people know that you have got conflict management skills. What if you do not have conflict management skills? What if you have no experience of managing conflicts and you know that conflict management skills is required as a manager, and that will be something which the interviewer will be looking for? You tell me, what are you going to do about this before I answer that? Simon, this is directed to you, and then I'll ask Ashish and Rashmi also. If you don't have a particular skill set and the job requirement is there, which is a basic skill gap analysis that you have done, what are you going to do about it?
Okay.
Tell me.
And my question is that.
Rashmi, hold on. Rashmi, hold on.
Okay,
Let Simon answer, and I'll come to you.
All right. I had one scenario within my team. Just conflict raised between one of my
Simon, my question is different.
Okay. Come again,
my
please.
question
Sorry.
is, you don't have the skills. It could be conflict management. It could be something else, right? Let's say negotiation skills. You have not done it in the past, and the interviewer is specifically looking for it.
Let's assume that I don't have that skill, and it's one among the requirements the interviewer is looking for.
Yes.
So how should I respond?
Forget respond. We are not in the interview right now. You have sent your CV, applied for a job, and when you looked at the requirements of the job, you see negotiation skills.
Yes.
Right? You may or may not get the call for the interview. Right? Or let's say you have got a call for the interview. You have got a week's time before the interview happens. In this 1 week, what are you going to do about negotiation skills?
Basically, I'm going to start I'm going to find out some materials in order to get the skills concerning the negotiation skills. Fantastic. And why I'm asking this question? You might find that the job poster didn't mention those skills, and during the interview, the question come unexpected. So, as long as you are in the interview room, you should provide answer for those questions. That's why I'm trying to ask. Yes, sometimes
I will address it from both points
on the job.
Okay. So a question has been asked to you about a particular skill set or a particular technical skill. Either way, right? You could be asked, do you have any idea about COBOL programming? Or do you have any experience with negotiating? If you don't have it, if you have never done it, tell them you haven't done it. You don't have the particular skill set.
All right.
See, again, it goes back to the same thing, that if you lie at that time, one is the moment you lie, they will ask, okay, tell me one example. Then you're stuck. You don't have an example. You don't have a story. So you will falter. You will not be confident about a story which you are trying to make up at that moment. It will just not work. And you will appear very unauthentic.
Yes, that's true.
If you're able to flip through the interview, if you made up a story and told them, and you end up getting the job, which requires you to have negotiation skills, every time the situation arises where you need to exercise the skill, you don't have the skill. You will fall flat again and again in that job. Right? So that's a problem. Now, of course, Rashmi, you're saying we can say that we can learn if someone will guide them or something, which is fine, completely fine. You can always say that I have learned plenty of things on the job in the past, and I'm confident I'll be able to do this also. Then you have to leave it to the organization whether they want somebody who is expert in this or who is okay to learn it on the spot. And quick learner, yes. See, as I said earlier also, saying that I'm a quick learner is good, but they will ask you how. Tell us, convince us how you are a quick learner. Have you learned other things quickly in the past that will give us the confidence that you are a quick learner? So you should have at least 3 stories which prove you are a quick learner. 3 1-minute stories where you are a quick learner. And they have to be very strong and powerful stories. Some skill which you required, which people gain over a period of, let's say, a year or 2 years of experience, and you were able to quickly learn it in a year, in a month or two, or in a week or two, and do the job. You will need those stories, right? And you will have to acquire those skills starting after the interview. You don't have to wait for the job to come and job to start and do on the job. You will have to start right away, right? So that's how you handle it in the interview. Now going back to preparation for the interview. Excuse me. Remember, in the preparation to the interview, you are evaluating the job, right? What the requirements are. There will be things which are listed down in the JD of the job requirement by the interviewer or by the recruiter. And there are managerial skills, like what different managerial skills are there: conflict management, negotiation skills. These are a few things which are pretty generic, required for the typical managerial roles. If you identify a gap, you should immediately start working on those gaps. Look for courses, online courses. There are plenty of free courses as well as paid courses which will teach you something. Now, these will not make you experts, but they will definitely give you a good idea of what those skill sets are. Negotiations, at least you can learn the basics of negotiation by go to YouTube, go to udemy.com, right? Udemy has got plenty of courses. There are other websites like Udemy where you will find plenty of courses, free as well as paid. And the paid courses are also not very expensive. They could range from like $10 to $100, right? If it's a skill that you want to acquire for a particular role, then you will have to invest in it, right? You should continuously invest in your learnings. So these skills you need to build. Simon, if you have identified conflict management as an area which you don't have the skills, you don't have the experience, but they're most probably required for any managerial roles, I would suggest start learning about conflict management right away. YouTube, udemy.com, both will have lot of free content also to begin your journey with, get your basics. Then look for some advanced courses where you have to pay and then invest in time and energy in it. You won't have real life experience in it, but you will have experience enough to handle the question in an interview. If they ask, what about conflict management? You can create a hypothetical situation that if there is a situation, I will need to take step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. I don't really have a practical experience of it, but this is what I would do. The interviewer now knows that although you don't have experience, you know how to deal with the situation. That's 1. 2, the moment you have learned about conflict management or negotiation skills and you know the steps, I am sure you will find an example in your past work life or personal life where you have actually done conflict management or negotiation, because our lives are filled with that. Trust me, we have managed a lot of conflicts internally within our heads and heart, as well as externally with family, with friends, at work. We have handled a lot of conflicts, not just calling it conflict management. In my 17 years of work experience of being a change manager, I have coached many people for job interviews, on their life, on some issues they were facing. I've done that. I wasn't calling it coaching then. I was just calling it conversations with a friend, right? Now I know that's coaching. And I can actually make a career out of it by charging people for coaching, right? What I offer here is 2 hours of an overview of how do you crack your interviews, right? This is coaching in a way. I've done this so many times over the past 20 years with so many colleagues and friends. Saying, oh, Hemant, I'm preparing for an interview. I would get on the call with them or I would meet them over coffee. We would have 2-3 hours of conversation. And this is the kind of stuff I would talk to them and prepare them for it. I would do mock interviews and so on and so forth, right? So we are unknowingly doing a lot of things. The moment you have a structured learning out of it, you will be able to identify stories that you can tell. It can be from your personal life. All your stories need not be from your work life. Some of them can be from your personal life also, right? For example, a random thing. At some point in time, you might have arranged or organized a picnic, an event in personal life, not at work. It could be with friends, it could be in the place where you stay of your society or colony, right? A network you are part of, and you have organized an entire event. Like I am a Toastmaster. I have organized Toastmaster events. I've been part of the organizing team. Those events have ranged from 50 people to 1,000 plus people. I have been part of teams and I have been at the helm of teams which have organized the annual events in the organization, which have been 100 people as well as 600 people. I've done that. So if I wanted to talk about event management in one of my interviews, I can go on and on. If I wanted to talk about project management, I've got, of course, projects to talk about, but an event which I created, managed, is a project in itself. I can turn that around and do it. Now, I don't know how to talk about project management. I don't know the terminology. I'm not a project manager. But if I do a project management course online, starting from basics and then little advanced and more advanced and a certification, whatever level I am, as my understanding of project management goes, I will be able to associate those terminologies and those processes to things that I have done, right? So project management will have certain things like, let's say, there's something called FMEA, which is like failure mode analysis. Like you list down everything that can go wrong. And then what will you do if it will go wrong? What can you do to prevent it from happening? This is failure mode analysis. I've forgotten what the E stands for. FMEA. Now, for anything you plan, even a vacation that you plan or an event you plan, we do some sort of this analysis. Now, I just don't say that, oh, I did an analysis of what could go wrong and we planned for it. I'll say we did a FMEA to figure out what all could go wrong and create a mitigation plan for everything, including taking these steps, etc. I can twist any experience into the right manner. And when I say twist, I'm using it in a very positive sense, not in the negative sense. I'm not talking about it as something where I'm going to fib and I'm going to lie and create something out of nothing, right? So if you don't have certain skills and if there is a gap in the skill, if something comes out of your skill gap analysis, you need to start plugging it. When you're aiming for certain roles, there are certain skill sets required. You should have some idea and knowledge about it, even if you lack the experience of it. You can't just let it be and hope that you will get the next job, because conflict management, team management, these are critical qualities for a manager. And the interviewing team will be looking for those. If you're not able to display it either as knowledge or skills or experience, they will find it very difficult to recruit, right? And you will face problems once you get into the job because you don't have the skills, not even the knowledge, right? Hope that answers your question, Simon. I've not seen you
Yes,
yet, so I'm still talking to a black box with Simon written on it.
Thank you very much. You have answered well. It's unfortunately here it's 90, so that's why I failed to switch on the camera.
No problem. No problem.
But I really appreciate your answers, and even this session is much helpful for us. Thank you very much, sir.
Great. So it's been almost more than an hour and a half. Yes, Ashish, you're right. Failure mode and effect analysis. So it comes from the fact that you identify what all things can go wrong and what is going to be the effect of that going wrong on your project. So thank you for that quick input. Okay, now I am almost concluding this session, coming to the last 2 points. One, if you're seeking for a job change or you're without a job and looking for jobs, you should ask yourself, what are you good at? What is that job or the role where you will be the best fit? Right? You need to figure that out. That's the role you want. And think of 5 such things. 5 jobs or 5 different roles that you can think of. Maybe you can't think of 5, you will have only 3. It now tells you what you should be looking for in terms of jobs. Right? Before you go to that stage where you get desperate, okay, I'm going to do anything that I get, at any salary that I get, anywhere that I get. I just need a job to get a salary. Yes, that is a desperation stage. You just take anything that you get. Fine. But much before that, as a first step, you should be thinking about what is the role that you want, what is the role you are going to be good at, and have that list ready in your mind. And just 3 to 5, not more than that. These are the 5 things out of which, if I get something, it would be great. And it has its priorities. This is the role that I want. This is my dream role. This is my dream organization where I want it. And you aim for it. Right? Once you have that role identified, of course, the next step will be what are the requirements of that role? What are the skill sets required? Technical skills, functional skills, managerial skills, strategic skills, right? Do you have it? This will give you the skill gap analysis. And now you start plugging them. On a continuous basis, you need to start working on plugging those gaps because you won't get that role or that job unless you plug these gaps, right? And a small note on the interview process itself. On the first interview call, either the HR will connect with you or the recruitment team will connect with you. If you get a chance to talk about it before the interview, great, or even during the interview, you can ask about what is going to be the recruitment process. Is it going to be one interview, decision made, offer letter, or it is going to be multiple rounds of interviews? How many rounds? Approximately how much time it will take? In certain organizations, even if it is 5 rounds of interviews, it can get done within 2 weeks' time, or sometimes even within a week, because they are in a hurry and they would want to recruit fast. While there can be other organizations which are recruiting on overall requirements, not an urgent basis, a 5-round interview process can take up to 2 months of time. I have been through a process which went for 2 months, and I don't remember how many was it. It was 5 or 7. Plenty of people interviewed me. I think it was 7, where the 6th and 7th was HR rounds, 2 rounds of HR, and everything got finalized, completed, offer letter ready. I was shown the offer letter also. This is what we are going to print and send you. You will have to physically sign and send it back to us. Just meet one more person who is the final big boss. It's a formality. You've already been selected. Just say hi, hello, and he just wants to meet you face to face once before we close this. So tomorrow morning you meet him, and I'll send you the offer letter after that meeting. I went to meet this person, chit chat, normal, not an interview process, but in that conversation, somewhere he asked me, why are you passionate about the organization? And I was like, no, I'm not passionate about the organization, because I would become passionate about the job and the company based on 2 things: people I work with and the job I am doing, the role I am playing, the work I am doing. Right? So people and the actual work I'm doing, not the description or the JD or the title. It's the actual work I'm doing, quality of the work. And I can experience those 2, people and work, only after I come into the organization. So I can't be passionate before I join the organization. And this guy, very senior guy, of course, he was the big boss. He says, I won't recruit a person who is not passionate about my company. And I said, chicken and egg situation. I can't get passionate unless I join the company, and you won't recruit me unless I am passionate about it. So chicken and egg. The interview ended there. I get a call from the HR. He was very furious with me. He was very angry at me. He said, what have you done? We almost closed everything. Your offer letter is ready, and now I'm told not to recruit. Yes, it can happen. I was being true to myself. I could have easily lied. I mean, like, it was a big company, great name. I could have said so many things. You are a market leader in HR consulting. You have done projects of these kinds. You have worked with these organizations. I have done this and I could be doing this in your organization and vision. I could have said a lot of things, but I wouldn't be true to myself. I'm not advising you on what path to apply, but all I'm saying is be true to yourself in terms of what is the approach you have towards a job, an interview, or what do you want to project. You may choose to go with the flow and say, okay, this is the organization where I want to work and I'm passionate about it, and you may have your reasons for it. I did not have. If I would have talked about me being passionate about the organization, most probably the person would have seen through my life, right? Because I wouldn't be passionate talking about my passion for the organization because I wasn't, right? So it depends entirely on you on how to do it, but your homework needs to be done. You need to be prepared for job interviews in general. You should have your stories ready and everything. And then you need to be prepared for your job interviews in specific, in terms of every interview that you are going to get to. You have to be prepared specifically for that interview. If you know who is going to interview, right? Even if one day before they send you a link that join this Zoom meeting and that invite has gone to two people, one is you and there is another person, most probably the other person is going to be the person who is going to interview you. Go to LinkedIn, check out his or her profile. That person will come to know that you have checked out his or her profile, but that's okay. You are going to meet that person. So you're just curious whom you are meeting. You will know at what level that person is operating. What is the past experience? Do you have any commonality in that experience? Like you have worked, like I find so many times, I find people who have worked in their past in Satyam, where I worked from 2005 to 2010. Now that's so much in the past. But I do find that there are common connections who have worked in Satyam either at the same time I was or at a different time. And it's a great conversation also. Oh, you have worked in Satyam. Oh, I was also there. You were in Hyderabad. I was in Bombay. If you worked with this person, no. It's a great conversation to have, no, in the middle of the interview if opportunity does arise. Or that person is part of Toastmasters and I am part of Toastmasters. I can always say, oh, I've been part of Toastmasters 3 years. I've done this, this, this. How about you? Have you played any leadership roles? Or you have been associated with some organization as a client, and I have also worked with as a client. These commonalities always help. It shows that you have read through the person's profile the same way this person was supposed to read your profile, right? So no harm in checking out the profile of the person who is interviewing you. No harm in being ready specifically for the interviewer as well as interview skills required for the job and so on and so forth, right? And please keep learning and keep improving your skill sets. Experience will give you certain skills. If there is a gap, at least get the knowledge from online courses, offline courses. If you find one, if you find that something is very critical, and spend some money and get those skill sets for yourself. Okay. I'm pretty much at the end of this session from my side. Everything that I wanted to talk about in terms of preparing for the interview I have shared, but it's all talk. I've given you guidelines, I've given you steps. You will need to act upon each one of them. You will have to create your stories. You will have to do your skill gap analysis. You will have to analyze the kind of roles you are aiming for and prepare for them. So it's now entirely on you. Find a friend you can work with to get those things going. If you're not fully motivated by yourself, a friend could help. Or find a coach you could work with. Of course, the coach will charge a fee for that, and so on and so forth. But a friend, a mentor, somebody you can work with to polish these things. It's great to do some mock interviews with friends also. Like, okay, I'll be the candidate. You ask me anything you want. And interviews can be many kinds. I've been in interviews which are nice conversations, completely comfortable conversations. I did not feel pressurized at all. Great interviewer. At the same time, I have been part of interviews where the interviewer was telling me you don't fit the role, and I'm telling me no, I can work here, and this is the way it is to be approached, and no, you don't fit the role. My whole interview was he telling me you don't fit the role and me convincing him how I fit the role. I got the job because that was his style of interviewing me. Way back in the past, I've even been asked, what is the color of the wall behind you? It's a trick question. It's something. Incidentally, I had a window behind me. So I probably registered that when I was entering the room and I said, yeah, I just have a window behind me. So there's no wall behind me. Whatever color you see is whatever is passing by the window at this point in time. Great save for me. It worked. Sometimes these trick questions stumble you. You never get flustered by these questions because those questions were designed to see how you react. Right? Great. So that's all from my end. Message to you all, if you at a parting note will be prepare for your interviews. Be prepared when you go in and be in the right mindset. Don't go in unprepared. Don't go in with a gamble. Right? With that, I'm open to any final questions before we conclude the sessions. And I'll just move my seat. My laptop is losing charge now. Okay. Any questions? Or we'll call it a day.
How we can face the nervousness during the interview?
If you're prepared well and confident, there is no nervousness.
No, like you said, sometimes between your interview, you have time of 1 week.
Yes.
And you don't know about it. So you can do any course or we can ask with any senior person. But on the spot, if they're asking, so one strategy can work out that, okay, I will learn because in few past experiences, I have learned and I have succeeded.
Absolutely.
But if we don't know anything about topic itself, so how we should react? We should say that we don't know, or what we should react that time.
You answered the question. If you don't know, you tell them you don't know.
Oh, okay.
Honesty is in general the best policy in interviews. I mean, that's something I have advised anybody and everybody I've coached in the last 20 years about facing interviews. Honesty is in general the best policies. If you have an answer, give it to the best of your abilities, right? And that is a very important thing. If you do not have the answer to how will you manage conflict, think of an answer. If you were put in a situation of managing a conflict, what will be the process you will follow to manage the conflict, right? A very valid way of responding to it. If you have no idea about a particular process, let's say somebody asks you, oh, we have a ISO 5000, ISO not 5000, but maybe 9000 or 20,000 coming up. How will you manage that? And you have absolutely no idea, and there's no way you can even think of something on the spot. Please tell them, I have not done ISO certification in an organization before. I have no experience of that. It's a very valid response to a question. I don't know. A very valid and safe response, because the moment you say that, no more questions on that. The moment you try to fib and lie about it, you can expect another question to come, which will only stumble you further. Don't try to dig yourself into a grave, right? Okay. Always be very careful about areas that you don't have any information on. Just tell them you don't know. Because I told you, if you lied, if you made up an answer and you got through the interview, if you got the job, you will be faced with that situation or that skill set on a daily basis in your job. If you don't have it, you have a big problem.
Okay. And as a fresher, we are going for first time. Like, I'm going to start my career now soon.
Yes.
From January, I'm going to apply and I'm preparing myself.
Yes.
So, like, I have interest in administration. So, should we ask for the salary? Because I'm going to get experience first. So, should I ask for the salary or just to enter for the experience if I get job?
Both ways. And I'll tell you how do you do it. If you are a fresher with no experience on your CV, irrespective of your age, right? Certain organizations will pick freshers straight out of college. Certain organizations may look for freshers who are restarting their career. A lot of women are trying to start their career at a later stage or trying to restart their career after a 5-year break, 10-year break because kids happened and so on and so forth. It's a reality. When they are selecting your CV for an interview, right?
Yes.
They've already considered that. that you don't have a recent work experience or you don't have any work experience.
Okay.
So when they are evaluating you, they have a job requirement and they have a certain expectation from you. And that expectation is rooted on this information that you do not have experience or a recent experience. Now, during the interview, you will have to prove why you are a good choice over other candidates who may or may not have experience.
Yes.
Now, this is where
Then
your
how-
research and preparation comes in.
Yes.
Look at the
Okay.
job, its requirements, and dig up every story that you can from your life. Personal
Okay.
life, past experience, any projects you have been involved with, anything that you have involved with, where you have exhibited those qualities. Right? If they are looking for managerial skills, find examples. If they are looking at administrative skills, find examples. Have you managed any events? Be ready with the stories. Have you managed conflicts? Be ready with the stories. Have you helped a friend in their own business? Be ready with the stories. Have you done your own business at some point in time? Even if it was selling things from your own, whether you were part of, let's say, Amway, selling products for Amway, it is an experience. Can you bring that out? Can you relate that experience to the job requirements? It is about telling them you are fit for the role in your own way. Not necessary to have the standard experience stories. You can have your own stories. Right? I don't say that you will be at the same, you have the same opportunity as someone else who is just fresh out of college or who has got relevant experience. But if you're ready with your stories, you have a fighting chance. If you go unprepared, you have absolutely no chance. If you have been chosen for the interview, your CV has been selected for the interview, the recruiter and the HR has done their part of giving you a chance. If you were not ready for the interview, if you were not ready for with your stories for the job, if you have done nothing to bridge that skill gap analysis by learning something online or offline, you are to be blamed for not being prepared. You have not done your part. So the organization gave you a chance, you did not take the chance. So you have to go prepared. Right? Being a fresher is not a negative, it's not even a disadvantage. Because if you're getting selected for the interview, they know that you don't have experience. There are other people they are interviewing who have no experience. So you have a fighting chance. So don't consider it as a disadvantage. Any organization which wants experience is not going to select your CV. So that's fair enough. They want experience. They do not have the time, space, and energy to work with a fresher. That's fair enough. I mean, it's something like this. You want to go to a doctor, you would rather go to an experienced doctor rather than a doctor who has just passed out of college and who's just who's just practicing, starting his practice. You'd not be very comfortable probably.
Yes, thank you so much, Hemant sir. And we got so many takeaways. And your like this session has built up our confidence. So definitely, whenever I go, I read well, and on each topic, I will prepare myself as much I can. So instead of facing like, oh, if I could have prepared this, maybe I could give answer. So instead of regret, better to prepare ourselves. So it will be the good effort for us.
Absolutely. And that preparation will give you the confidence with which you respond to every answer, which makes you a winning candidate. A lot of people are not confident during the interview. And that is because of their mindset, the induced helplessness that they have learned because of past failures, lack of preparation, all that. When you go in prepared and with confidence, half the battle is won. So definitely that helps a lot. Thank you, Rashmi, for your questions as well as your comments. Simon, Ashish, Deepika, any questions before we conclude the session? We have already exceeded quite a lot of time.
I actually don't have any questions, but I have a lot of key takeaways from this session. Honestly, right from the time when you started with mindset, then the fitment and skills that are required for the job, and matching or marrying your stories, mini stories with the fitment and skills that you have. that is one thing that I'm particularly taking away, because I used to think in a different way. So now I'll be thinking about what I'm passionate about. I've already written down a few things, and now I can relate to the stories that I already have from my earlier jobs. And I will definitely, when I give the next interview, I will definitely talk about them. Then, then so storytelling is something that I will take as a key takeaway. And also one more thing which I have noted down, that you mentioned that stories from your personal events, which when Simon was talking about conflict management,
Yes.
something that you, not from your personal life, just as a sense of humor, but like a married man would know much about conflict management.
We live it
But
every day.
yes,
Okay.
but
Good.
yes, the examples that you gave, I'll relate to them also, because conflict management is a common thing that everyone comes around. Uh, and the last thing is the skill and gap analysis. So I think the most important thing is preparing for an interview can start from the time when you're working in an existing company. Say for example, I'm working with EY right now. I'm looking forward to work with some other company. I can look at the job description of a desired role where I want to work and do a skill gap analysis, list down 5 things that I need to work on, and take help of Udemy or some other YouTube or other channels to actually develop those skills and
Yes.
be confident about it. So the preparation has to start right from today and not from the day when I get an opportunity. Then I may sound less confident, I guess.
And there is one other crucial angle to this, and I wanted to keep that as the last part, as a parting shot. We've been talking about job interviews, and it's not just about job interviews, right? Ashish, could you go on mute for a minute? Yeah. It is not just about job interviews. Even while you are in the same organization, as you grow and as you go up, the manager, the senior manager, are always constantly looking at people to promote. When you start thinking like this, like trying to get a new job, if you apply the same thinking in your current job, that now I want to get promoted, that's a new role that you're looking at. It has its own job description, it has its own requirements, it requires its own skills. Give it the same treatment. You should be learning to aim for that job. You should be displaying it, you showing it to your manager and senior manager that I have the skills for the next role, for a higher role, for a bigger role, for bigger projects. Only then it will happen. If you're waiting for the annual appraisal to ask for a promotion, it's not going to work, because you're asking for a promotion has got nothing to do with you getting a promotion. They would have already evaluated you during the year whether you are fit for a promotion or not, and it's that time in the year when they make the decision. So you should be giving them enough material, enough seeds all through the year that you are fit for the next role, so that you get promoted. In the interview, in the next annual appraisal that you have, if you want to get promoted, you should ask them, what do I need to do to get promoted this year? What do I need to do to get promoted next year? They will tell you, and then you work on all those things and deliver, right? You deliver those things, your requirements, and next year when you ask for promotion, they better have a very solid reason to not promote you. Or there is somebody else who has been a better performer at all those requirements, so that person takes the cake. But now they should not be able to tell you, oh, you have not done this, because you said that, oh, you told me that I need to do these things, I've done all these things, so what's the reason for not promoting? They can't hide behind it. And when you told them at the beginning of the year that I want to get promoted at the end of the year, and tell me all these things and I will do these things, they are now evaluating you consciously also. They're not just looking at in general at the entire team, they are looking specifically at you, because they know you are ambitious, you are driven, and you are now going to work towards a promotion. So why not evaluate you? They will give you opportunities to prove yourself also, because they really want to test you, right? You have told them you want the promotion. They will test you for that promotion. They will give you opportunities to prove yourself. And you will be able to prove yourself better with those promotions, with those opportunities. So if you want something, let people know you want it and let them help you in that process. So the entire conversation that we had today about cracking job interviews is not just a particular job when you're looking for it. It is also for the next promotion that you want, the next level or the next role that you want. It's about preparing for that also with the right mindset and preparation. Great. Thank you very much. We have had several people coming in and going out, but I think Rashmi, Simon, Ashish, you have stayed consistent throughout. Deepika, you joined a little late, but thanks for joining. There was a comment you made in the chat. Fear is always there during the start of the interview. It gets settled in middle part, but always gets blank with words because of fear. How to overcome the fear? The fear is there because of lack of preparation. The fear is there because you think you won't be able to answer certain questions. And that is where all the preparation comes into play. All your preparation for an interview is towards looking at your entire JD. What are the skill sets they are requiring? How are you going to respond them? What are the different stories from your work life, your career, your personal life that you can tell to prove yourself? If you put all that together, you have got enough stories to tell. You will never be blank. And even if you get to a point where you don't know the answer, I'm sure you will be able to figure out something to say, or the last resort, I don't know. If they're asking a very pinpointed question, you can always say, I don't know. So fear of going blank should no longer exist if you have spent time in preparing yourself. Great. Hope that answers your questions. Great. Thank you very much, each one of you. If for a moment, all of you can come on video, I would love to take a picture of all of us in the session. Great if you can come on video for a moment before we conclude the session. Thanks, Ashish, Rashmi, Simon, Deepika, and SF. Who are you? I don't know your name and you have recently joined. If you can come on video, that will be great. Simon, Rashmi, Deepika, if you can come on video. Yes, Deepika, thank you. Rashmi, Simon, Rashmi, thank you. Simon, for a moment, just while I take a picture. Is that possible? And SF. Super fast, super fast.
Yes.
Thanks, Simon, coming. Okay, SF cannot come on video. That's fine. I'll take a quick picture. Say hi, everybody. I have to say this one.
Hi.
Hey. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this great session. It was nice interacting with all of you. Your questions made the session even richer. There was a lot of content I was prepared with, but then your questions helped put out some more content, some more advice that I probably wouldn't have shared if the question wasn't asked. So thank you very much for your questions also. And see you around. Thank you. And I'll stop the recording now. Up. Thank you.